For years, Weird Al Yankovic has been one of the most mysterious figures in the entertainment world. He's known for his funny parodies, unique sense of humor, and quirky persona. Yet, despite being a public figure for so long, there have always been aspects of his life that he kept hidden from the public. The more people watched his interviews, listened to his music, or followed his career, the more they began to wonder, what is he really like behind the scenes? His silence on certain topics made fans and the media question if there was something more to him that wasn't being revealed. This wasn't just about his music, it wasn't even just about his style of comedy. Fans began to wonder what made him tick. Was he the same guy who wrote songs like Amish Paradise and Eat It, or was there something deeper at play? The mystery grew stronger as the years passed, especially when Weird Al continued to avoid discussing certain personal matters. The curiosity surrounding him only increased as his fans became more intrigued by the questions he never answered. Over time, this silence became a story in itself. It was almost as if he was teasing the world with his refusal to give a peek behind the curtain. And for those who grew up with his music, especially those who followed him through the highs and lows of his career, there was an unmistakable feeling of wanting to know the truth. What was it that Weird Al was hiding, and why did he keep things so private? This silence wasn't about avoiding questions from the press or fans, it was a more subtle form of keeping something from being exposed, something that made fans all the more curious. After all, Yankovic had always seemed so open in some ways. His comedy and his public image were so vibrant and full of life, so why would someone who made a career out of poking fun at everyone else be so reluctant to reveal personal details about himself? This feeling of intrigue built up over the years. Weird Al was an entertainer who had become a household name, yet he still managed to keep certain aspects of his life away from the spotlight. For many fans, this was both frustrating and fascinating. They wanted to know the man behind the parodies. They wanted to know what he was really like when the cameras weren't rolling, when the jokes weren't flowing, and when he wasn't performing for an audience. Then, after all this time of careful silence and calculated mystery, something changed. Fans and the media were finally going to get an answer to the questions they had been asking for years. Weird Al Yankovic, the man who made a career out of funny songs and lighthearted jokes, finally broke his silence. He didn't just hint at what had been kept hidden, he openly acknowledged it. And in doing so, he confirmed what everyone had long suspected. The answer was not what people expected, but it was exactly what they had always wondered. What was the truth that Weird Al had been keeping? Was he trying to hide something dark, or was it simply a case of him being more private than his public image suggested? The fact that he had kept things under wraps for so long only made his eventual revelation that much more impactful. For years, people had speculated, made assumptions, and even created their own theories about the man behind the funny songs. And now the moment of truth had arrived. But why did he keep this mystery alive for so long? The answer isn't so simple. In fact, Weird Al had always been someone who valued his privacy, even in a career that often put him in the public eye. He didn't see the need to expose every aspect of his life. His work, the songs, the parodies, these were what he wanted people to focus on. The personal details, they were his to keep. This made him a more intriguing figure because fans always felt like there was something they weren't seeing. He was a man who never fully revealed himself, even as he entertained millions of people across the world. And this silence only added to the allure. This mystery wasn't just about hiding secrets, it was about the fact that Weird Al had a different side to him, one that was private, perhaps even more serious, and something that fans didn't often get to see. His decision to keep certain parts of his life out of the public eye only made people more curious. They wanted to know why someone who seemed so confident on stage could be so guarded in real life. What was going on beneath the surface? This question became the root of much of the fascination with his career and personal life. And yet, despite the constant speculation, Weird Al was in control. He never let anyone push him into revealing more than he was comfortable with. He remained in charge of his narrative, crafting his public image with precision. That's why when he finally revealed the truth, it was such a game changer. His fans weren't just getting a glimpse into his private life, they were getting the full story. They had waited for this moment for so long, and now everything they thought they knew would be confirmed. For Weird Al, the mystery was never just about keeping secrets for the sake of it. It was a deliberate choice. He wanted his fans to know him for his art, not for the details of his personal life. And in a world where so many celebrities are constantly under a microscope, Weird Al Yankovic's decision to keep certain things private made him stand out. The mystery was part of his charm, part of what made him unique. But now that mystery was finally coming to an end. In the end, Weird Al had given the world a glimpse into his life in the most unexpected way. He wasn't just confirming what fans had suspected, he was revealing a side of himself that had been carefully hidden for years. The long silence, the carefully constructed image, everything was about to make sense in a way that fans could never have predicted. There has always been something about Weird Al Yankovic that made fans wonder if there was more to him than what met the eye. While his songs were funny and light-hearted, there was always a sense that the man behind those parodies was hiding something. It wasn't just the jokes and the music that kept people engaged, it was the mystery of what they didn't know about him. Fans could see that he was a brilliant musician and a talented comedian, but there was more beneath the surface. This made them wonder, what was he really like? What was the truth behind his public image? For years, fans and the media speculated about Weird Al's life. Was he really as quirky and fun-loving as he appeared? Or was there another side to him, one that was far more serious, perhaps even a bit more complicated? People saw him on stage, entertaining millions, but they didn't know what he was like when the cameras were off. And this is where the curiosity grew. Fans would catch glimpses of him in interviews or see photos that suggested there was more to his personality than just the jokes. Yet for the most part, Weird Al seemed to avoid talking about anything personal. He was happy to entertain, but when it came to revealing anything about his private life, he kept things tight-lipped. As the years went on, it became clear that this wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't as if people weren't asking about his life, it was that he wasn't offering any answers. The media would try to dig deeper, asking questions about his childhood, his relationships, and his views on fame, but every time Weird Al would deflect the questions with humor or simply avoid them altogether. It wasn't that he was being rude or uncooperative. Instead, he was simply protecting his privacy, and this only made the public more curious. In a world where so many celebrities seem eager to share every detail of their lives, Weird Al was an outlier. He wasn't interested in sharing intimate details about his personal world. This only made fans more determined to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. It became almost like a puzzle, with people trying to piece together clues from his interviews, his music, and his public appearances. The more people tried to guess, the more mysterious Weird Al became. He wasn't just an entertainer, he was a puzzle that fans wanted to solve. This sense of curiosity grew as fans realized that Weird Al was someone who had been in the public eye for decades, yet still managed to keep a large part of his life hidden. He wasn't just a musician, he was an enigma. And this enigma intrigued people even more. There was something about the way he spoke about his music, his career, and even his personal views, that suggested there was more to him than the fun-loving, wacky persona he projected on stage. His refusal to talk about certain things only made fans more eager to know the truth, and yet as much as fans wanted to know, Weird Al seemed perfectly content, keeping things to himself. He wasn't interested in giving the public a peek into his private life, but this silence wasn't about being secretive for the sake of it. It was about him maintaining control over how much of himself he shared. He knew that the more people wanted to know about him, the more they would look for clues, and the more they would make assumptions. But Weird Al had always been in charge of his own narrative. He didn't want to be defined by rumors or assumptions. Instead, he chose to let his work speak for itself, leaving the personal side of his life as something to remain private. It was this balance between the public and private that made Weird Al so interesting. Fans loved his music and his humor, but they were also fascinated by the man behind the jokes. What was he really like? Did he have a family? What was his life outside of the parodies? These questions lingered, and every time he avoided answering them, it only deepened the mystery. Weird Al had built a career on being unpredictable and unexpected, but when it came to his personal life, he was in full control. This was something fans respected, but it also kept them on edge, wondering when the truth would finally come out. And then after years of careful silence, it happened. Weird Al finally confirmed what people had long suspected. The answers that fans had been craving for so long were now being revealed. It was as if the curtain had been pulled back, and for the first time the world could see what had been hidden. But what made this moment even more interesting was that it wasn't just a simple answer. It was more than what people expected. The truth that Weird Al revealed wasn't just about his life, it was about who he really was as a person. What he had kept hidden was now laid bare. And fans were left to process what it meant. Was this what they had been waiting for all these years? Was the mystery finally solved, or was there still more to discover? For some, this revelation answered many of the questions that had been building up over time. But for others, it raised even more questions. It was a moment that was both satisfying and surprising. A confirmation of what fans had suspected, but with a twist that no one saw coming. This moment was significant not just because Weird Al revealed the truth, but because it showed that he wasn't afraid to share the real him. For years he had kept people guessing, but now he had chosen to be open. And even though it took time for him to get to this point, fans were grateful that they could finally understand the person behind the humor and the music. But one thing was clear, Weird Al wasn't done surprising his fans. Even after the big reveal, there was still a sense that he had more to say, more to share, and more to offer. And with that, the mystery of Weird Al Yankovic, while cracked open, was far from over. For many years, Weird Al Yankovic has been a staple in the world of comedy and music. With his unique style of parodies, catchy tunes, and witty lyrics, he became a beloved figure for fans around the world. But there was always one thing that stood out about him: the lack of personal details he shared with the public. Even though he was known for being a talented and funny entertainer, there was always a sense that something about his life was being kept hidden. Fans would often wonder why Weird Al never spoke much about his personal life, and the more they thought about it, the more intrigued they became. People were always eager to know more about the man behind the funny songs. Weird Al had given so much of himself through his music and comedy, but the more successful he became, the more private he seemed to be. This secrecy only made fans more curious. What was it about his life that he didn't want to share? What was he hiding, if anything? Was there something mysterious or even shocking that he had kept under wraps for so many years? It was almost as if every time he avoided a personal question or made a joke about his life, it added fuel to the fire of curiosity. Fans wanted to know the truth, but for the longest time they were left with only speculation. As time passed, people started to create their own theories about Weird Al. Some believed that he was simply a private person who preferred to keep his life away from the public eye. Others speculated that there was something deeper, more personal, that he was afraid to share with the world. Fans who admired his comedy were eager to know if his personal life matched the humor and lightheartedness of his public persona, or if there was a completely different side to him. The curiosity surrounding Weird Al grew stronger with each passing year. What made the mystery even more intriguing was the way he handled it. Weird Al never seemed to be in a rush to reveal more about himself. He was always polite in interviews, often deflecting personal questions with a joke or a smile, but there was never any real attempt to dig deeper into his life. In a world where so many celebrities were constantly sharing their personal experiences and private details with their fans, Weird Al stood out as someone who didn't seem to care much about revealing anything beyond what was necessary. And this made people wonder why was he so private? What made him different from the others? This created a kind of tension in the air. On one hand, there were fans who loved his music and respected his ability to keep his personal life to himself. On the other hand, there were fans who were growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of information about his life. They wanted to know more. They wanted to know about his family, his relationships, his childhood, and what made him who he was. Every time they didn't get an answer, the curiosity grew. It was like trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces. Fans could see the big picture, but they were missing key details that would make it all make sense. And then after all this time of keeping people guessing, something changed. Weird Al Yankovic finally revealed the truth. He didn't just share a little bit of information, he confirmed what everyone had suspected. This revelation was something that fans had been waiting for, but they didn't know how big it would be. It wasn't just a simple acknowledgement of something in his life, it was a much deeper insight into who he really was. The moment of revelation was huge. It was like opening a door that had been closed for so long, and for the first time fans were allowed to look inside. They had always wondered about the man behind the jokes, and now they were finally getting an answer. But even though Weird Al had confirmed what people had suspected, the revelation raised even more questions. It was like peeling back one layer of the mystery, only to find that there were still more layers beneath it. The excitement of finally getting answers mixed with a sense of awe. Weird Al had been able to keep such a big part of his life hidden for so long, and now that it was being revealed, fans couldn't help but feel a bit of wonder. The truth was out, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter in understanding who Weird Al Yankovic really was. What had made him such an interesting figure for so many years wasn't just his music or his comedy, it was the fact that he had remained a bit of a mystery for so long. The truth that he revealed wasn't just about personal details, it was about the kind of person he was. Fans had always respected him for his talent, but now they would see a different side of him, a side that was more complex and real than the public persona that had been created over the years. It was almost as if he had been playing a character for so long that when the truth came out, it surprised everyone. People had their suspicions, but nothing could have prepared them for the full picture. In many ways, Weird Al's decision to reveal what he had kept hidden for so long felt like a reward for the fans who had supported him over the years. It wasn't just about him giving in to pressure, it was about him finally deciding to share a part of himself that he had kept locked away. And that moment of honesty made fans appreciate him even more. The mystery had been a big part of his charm, but revealing the truth showed a new level of trust and openness with his audience. Even after the big reveal though, there was still a sense that Weird Al had more to say. The answers that fans had been waiting for weren't the end of the story. They were just a part of it. It was clear that Weird Al was still an enigma in many ways. He had confirmed what fans had suspected, but that only opened the door to more questions. The curiosity that had surrounded him for so many years wasn't completely satisfied with the revelation. Instead, it had only deepened. And in a way, this was the brilliance of it all. Weird Al had created a mystery around himself that no one could solve until he was ready to reveal the truth. And even after the truth was out, he managed to leave fans with a sense of wonder and excitement. The world had finally gotten to see a new side of Weird Al, and while the mystery was no longer as deep as it had once been, it was far from over. There would always be more to learn about him, and fans would continue to be fascinated by the layers that still remained to be uncovered. For many years, fans have seen Weird Al Yankovic as a comedic genius, creating hilarious parodies of popular songs and making people laugh with his unique style. His music was always catchy, and his humor was sharp. But while fans enjoyed his work and admired his talent, there was always something that made them wonder about him. Despite his success, Weird Al never seemed to share much about his personal life. His public persona was that of a funny, quirky entertainer, but what was he really like behind closed doors? The mystery of his private life became a topic of much curiosity. As Weird Al built a long and successful career, fans started to notice that there was very little information about his personal life available. This left many people intrigued. Why didn't he open up more? Was he trying to protect his privacy, or was there something else going on? His avoidance of personal topics made people wonder if there was something deeper he was hiding. Fans couldn't help but wonder, was he living a life full of secrets, or was he simply a very private person? And if he was hiding something, what could it possibly be? Every time Weird Al appeared in public or participated in an interview, fans would try to catch a glimpse of the real person behind the funny songs. They would try to read between the lines of his jokes and comments, hoping to uncover a clue about his true nature. But for the most part, he kept his personal life just that personal. There were a few things that fans knew about him, such as his long-time marriage and his love for music, but there was still a lot that was left unsaid. The more he avoided answering questions about his private life, the more fans started to speculate. What was he really like outside of his career? Was he living the kind of life that matched the humorous and light-hearted image he projected on stage, or was there another side to him that no one had seen? This sense of mystery continued to build as the years went on. Fans started to think that maybe Weird Al was deliberately keeping certain parts of his life hidden. Perhaps there was a reason he didn't want to share. Was he protecting himself or his family from the pressures of fame, or was there something more personal at stake? The mystery surrounding him wasn't just about avoiding gossip, it was about creating an image that was carefully controlled and crafted. The more fans speculated, the more curious they became about the things Weird Al might be hiding. As time went on, the curiosity reached new heights. People wanted to know more about his relationships, his upbringing, his thoughts on fame, and even his thoughts on the world outside of music. He had built a career out of making fun of celebrities and the culture of fame, yet he kept his own life private. This created an interesting contrast. Fans were used to seeing him make jokes about other people's lives, but they never got to see him talk about his own. The more they wanted to know, the more distant he seemed. Weird Al seemed to enjoy the idea that people were constantly guessing about him while he remained a mystery. It was as if the more he kept his personal life hidden, the more people became fascinated with who he really was. Then, after years of curiosity and unanswered questions, the unexpected happened. Weird Al Yankovic, the man who had been known for his ability to keep things private, finally opened up. For the first time in a long while, he shared something that had been hidden away. This moment was something fans had been waiting for. An answer to the questions they had been asking for years. What was it that he had been hiding? What was the truth behind the mystery? But when the revelation came, it wasn't as simple as fans had expected. It wasn't just a straightforward answer about his personal life. What Weird Al revealed was more complex than anyone could have predicted. It wasn't just about confirming or denying rumors, it was about showing a different side of him that had never been seen before. The revelation took fans by surprise, and it made them realize that there was a lot more to Weird Al than they had ever imagined. The public had known him for his parodies and his humorous personality, but there was a deeper, more serious side to him that he had kept hidden for years. Fans had always speculated that there was something more to him, but the truth was even more unexpected than they could have guessed. What he revealed gave people a new perspective on who he really was. It wasn't just about his career or his public image anymore, it was about understanding him as a person. And even though he had been quiet about his personal life for so long, the reveal didn't feel like a breach of privacy. Instead, it felt like an honest and thoughtful decision to share something important with his fans. This was a big moment for Weird Al. It was the first time he allowed the public to see a side of him that had been kept under wraps. But even though the mystery was partially revealed, it didn't answer everything. There were still pieces of the puzzle left unsolved. Fans still wondered about certain aspects of his life, and the curiosity didn't completely go away. But what Weird Al had shared was a stepping stone. It was a glimpse into a world that had remained hidden for so long, and it was a moment that would forever change how people viewed him. The reaction to this revelation was mixed. Some fans were thrilled to finally get answers, while others were left wanting more. But no matter the reaction, it was clear that Weird Al had successfully maintained his status as an intriguing and enigmatic figure. Even after revealing some personal truths, there was still a sense of mystery about him. It was this balance between openness and privacy that had kept fans so captivated for so many years. And while the mystery may have lessened, it certainly wasn't gone. Weird Al was still the same unpredictable, talented figure that fans had loved for decades, and the curiosity surrounding him would always linger. He had pulled back the curtain, but just enough to keep everyone guessing. For years, Weird Al Yankovic has been a figure of both comedy and mystery. He's known for his clever parodies, catchy songs, and his ability to make light of pop culture, but there's always been more to him than meets the eye. Fans have always loved his humor and creativity, but behind that, there's a quiet side to him that has sparked a lot of curiosity. For so long, he kept his personal life under wraps. While many celebrities love to share every detail of their lives, Weird Al was different. He built a career around being funny and entertaining, but when it came to himself, he kept things mysterious. This made people wonder why. What was he hiding, or was he just a private person? The curiosity about Weird Al grew over time as fans watched him rise to fame while maintaining an air of privacy. People could see that he had a family and a career, but there were so many other things that seemed off limits. Was this just his personality, or was there something deeper going on? Why wouldn't he share more about his life? Fans knew that the more someone tries to hide, the more people are interested in uncovering the truth, and so Weird Al became more than just a funny musician. He became a bit of a puzzle that fans couldn't wait to solve. Every time Weird Al gave an interview or made an appearance, fans would try to dig deeper, hoping for a hint of something more personal about him. But every time he would steer the conversation back to his music and comedy. It wasn't that he was rude or didn't want to talk, it was more like he simply had no interest in sharing the intimate details of his life with the world. Instead, he let his music and humor speak for him. And yet, the more he kept quiet, the more people became curious. What was so important about his private life that he didn't want anyone to know? It wasn't just that he was private, it was the way he chose to remain silent on so many personal matters that sparked intrigue. While other celebrities shared everything, from their relationships to their struggles, Weird Al was like a vault that wouldn't open. Fans had always respected his choice to keep his life private, but over the years it became clear that the curiosity was building up. People didn't just want to know about his work, they wanted to know about his world. What was it like to be Weird Al off stage? Was he just as quirky in real life as he appeared in his music videos, or was there a side to him that no one had seen yet? The mystery of Weird Al was something fans couldn't shake. They speculated about his childhood, his upbringing, and the things that shaped him into the person he became, yet he never gave them the answers they were craving. Every time someone asked a personal question, he would either deflect it with humor or simply refuse to answer. This left fans to wonder if he was hiding something. Was he protecting something or someone, or was it simply that he enjoyed keeping his private life off limits to the public? Whatever the reason, the mystery only made people more invested in learning about him. Then, after years of curiosity, Weird Al surprised everyone by finally giving them the answers they had been waiting for. It wasn't a big press conference or an explosive interview, it was a moment that felt natural and unforced, where Weird Al opened up just enough to reveal something important. For so long, fans had guessed about his life, and now they finally had answers. But the twist was that it wasn't just about confirming or denying what people had suspected. It was about something deeper. The truth was more complex than anyone had imagined. When Weird Al shared what he had kept hidden for so long, it wasn't just a simple revelation, it was a revelation that made fans think. It showed a side of him that no one had expected. Fans had long known him as the funny, quirky musician, but there was so much more to him than that. The truth he revealed wasn't just about his life, it was about his thoughts, his struggles, and the things that made him the person he was today. It was as though all the years of silence had led up to this one moment, and when it came, fans couldn't help but feel both surprised and amazed. Even though he had shared something personal, the mystery didn't completely disappear. In fact, it only deepened the curiosity. Fans now knew that there was more to him than just the jokes, but they still wondered what else he hadn't revealed. The more Weird Al shared, the more they realized that the truth was even more complicated than they could have imagined. This moment of revelation was not the end of the curiosity, it was just the beginning of a new chapter. And this was the brilliance of it all. For years, Weird Al had kept his personal life a secret, and the more he stayed silent, the more fans were drawn to him. When he finally opened up, it wasn't just about satisfying the curiosity, it was about showing that there was more to him than anyone had guessed. Fans had always seen him as a funny, quirky person, but now they could see that there was a depth to him that went beyond his public persona. It wasn't just about the humor anymore, it was about the person behind the jokes. In a world where celebrities often overshare their personal lives for fame or attention, Weird Al had always been different. He kept his personal life out of the spotlight, and that made him stand out. But when the time came for him to reveal a part of himself, it wasn't done for attention, it was done because he felt it was the right time. And even though fans had spent years speculating and wondering, the moment of revelation didn't feel like an answer to every question. Instead, it felt like an invitation to understand him in a new way. It was as if Weird Al had opened a door, and while it wasn't wide open, fans were given a chance to step inside and see a part of his world they had never seen before. This moment was important because it allowed fans to understand that Weird Al was more than just the image he had created for himself. He had built a career around being a funny and quirky figure, but now people could see that there was a real person behind the jokes. The curiosity that had built up over the years was finally answered, but the truth wasn't simple. It was layered and complex, and it left people wanting to know more. It wasn't just about who Weird Al was, it was about who he had become, and how he had chosen to reveal that person to the world. For many years, Weird Al Yankovic had been a mystery wrapped in humor and creativity. Fans knew him for his parody songs, his witty lyrics, and his ability to make light of almost anything in pop culture. He had become a beloved figure, making people laugh with his clever takes on popular songs and trends. However, behind the laughter and jokes, there was a side to Weird Al that few people ever got to see. While he made it clear that he was dedicated to his work and his fans, his personal life was mostly kept in the shadows. This led to a growing sense of curiosity among his fans. What was he like outside of his comedic persona? Why didn't he share more about himself? What was it that he was so determined to keep hidden? The questions surrounding his private life were something that fans couldn't shake. Over the years, they speculated about who he was behind the music. Was he as eccentric in his personal life as he was in his songs, or was there a more serious side to him? Fans were particularly curious about his family, his upbringing, and his thoughts on fame. While other celebrities seemed happy to share every detail of their lives, Weird Al kept his personal world closed off. This only made people more curious. The less he shared, the more intrigued they became. It was almost as though the more he kept hidden, the more people wanted to know. What made this even more interesting was the way he handled interviews and public appearances. Weird Al had a way of deflecting personal questions with humor, but it was clear that he didn't want to talk about certain aspects of his life. His ability to keep his private world a secret was both fascinating and frustrating for fans. They could see that there was a person behind the jokes, but they didn't know much about him. Was he trying to protect his family from the spotlight, or was he simply a private person who didn't care to share those details with the public? This mystery only fueled their desire to know more. Fans began to wonder if there was something more going on. They speculated that perhaps he had faced challenges in his personal life that he didn't want to share. Maybe there was a past that he wasn't ready to talk about, or perhaps he had chosen to keep things private to avoid the pressures of being constantly under the public eye. Whatever the reason, the mystery surrounding Weird Al only grew as time went on. Every time he avoided a personal question or changed the subject, fans couldn't help but feel more intrigued. It was as though they were being kept at arm's length, never quite able to get close enough to truly understand the man behind the music. Then, after years of speculation, Weird Al did something that took everyone by surprise. He opened up in a way that no one had expected. For so long fans had been guessing about his life, and now, finally, they were about to get some answers. But what he revealed wasn't as simple as they had imagined. It wasn't just about his personal relationships or family details, it was something deeper. The truth was far more complex and thought-provoking than anyone had anticipated. And even though fans had long been curious about his life, they didn't know just how much they had been missing. When Weird Al revealed what he had kept hidden, it wasn't just about satisfying curiosity, it was about sharing a part of himself that had never been seen before. This revelation wasn't about giving fans a glimpse into his day-to-day life or answering every question that had been asked. Instead, it was about showing a side of him that people hadn't considered. Fans had known him as a funny, quirky person, but what they learned from his reveal was that there was much more to him than just the image he had built. His humor, his music, and his jokes had always been the front he presented to the world, but behind that there was a real person with emotions, challenges, and experiences that shaped who he had become. This moment was significant not just because Weird Al revealed his personal life, but because it challenged the expectations that people had about him. Fans had always viewed him as a larger-than-life figure, someone who could make jokes about anything, someone who never took life too seriously. But now they were seeing that there was a depth to him that they hadn't realized before. The revelation wasn't just about the facts, it was about understanding him as a person. The humor that had defined his career didn't disappear, but it became clear that there was more to the man who made people laugh. This moment of revelation was powerful because it didn't just satisfy fans' curiosity, it changed the way people thought about Weird Al. It showed that behind the jokes, behind the music, there was a person with a story to tell. And while the answers that he gave were important, they didn't tell the whole story. There were still parts of him that remained private, and perhaps that's what made this revelation so compelling. It wasn't a full unveiling, it was a glimpse into a world that had long been kept away from the public eye. And even though he had shared more than ever before, there was still a sense of mystery left. What made this even more intriguing was the fact that Weird Al had built a career on parodying and poking fun at people's personal lives and public personas. He had made a name for himself by taking popular songs and turning them into humorous, often exaggerated versions of the original. His ability to make light of others' lives had earned him respect in the world of comedy. But when it came to his own life, he had always been much more private. The contrast between how he made fun of others and how he kept his own life private made fans even more curious about what he was hiding. This moment of openness was both refreshing and unexpected. It was a reminder that even the people we think we know can have layers that we don't see. It also reminded fans that Weird Al wasn't just a character on stage, he was a person with his own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. And that was what made his work so powerful. His humor was relatable, and his music resonated with so many people because at the heart of it, he was just like them. He might have been an entertainer, but he was also a person who had a life beyond his public persona. As fans digested the news, it became clear that Weird Al had managed to keep his personal life a secret for so long, because he wanted to control what people knew about him. He had spent years building a career around his music and comedy, and he wanted to keep certain parts of his life separate from that. The more he kept hidden, the more fans became fascinated with what he was keeping from them. But now with this new revelation, people could see him in a new light. He had shared more than they expected, and in doing so he had earned even more respect. The mystery had been peeled back, but it hadn't been fully solved, and that was what made it so captivating. Even after revealing parts of his life, the mystery of Weird Al was far from over. Fans may have gotten some answers, but they were left with more questions. And in a way that was the magic of Weird Al, he had always been able to keep people guessing. His life was no longer completely hidden, but there was still enough mystery to keep the curiosity alive. It was as if he had shown the world a small piece of his soul, and now people were left wanting to know more.